Hola, minasan! Welcome back for another round of Warhammer research. I know I said that that was gonna be done with Matt Ward, but Vickrul65 gave me another recommendation for Neckbeardia TTS Archive channel. That'll be a new channel to check out. Matt Ward and his consequences have been a disaster for 40k lore. Now, keep in mind that the video that I saw previously had a little bit of had some comedic events, comedic stuff to it, but also was extremely on the bias side. Like, you could really feel the anger coming out of it. And even though it was pretty fun to watch, I gotta be careful not to fall into biases too. You know, even though Matt Ward was indeed hands on with what he did. Keep in mind that the executives are also giving him, instructions as well. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not entirely just him alone. Games Workshop is also, part of the process. Like, they wouldn't agree to do so, like, they wouldn't let him have carte blanche, like it was explained. They would have to pull the brakes on some things, or give him like a mandate or some type of other direction to go with Warhammer as he made his way through. It's not all his fault, is what I'm saying. It's not 100% his fault, but he is a major contributor to the whole thing. And I figure if I want to close this arc off, let me at least cover one more video on him, just so we don't have any biases here on the channel, and make sure we get a little bit more information on this, not just from the whims of comedic biases with silly memes on it. It's a good video, it wasn't that bad of a video, but it was filled with memes, and there were a lot of jokes, and a lot of Warhammer fans are very passionate about their hobby and regards to Matt Ward, and should do a little bit more further. You know what I'm saying? Because there are still fans that did enjoy what Matt Ward did. I don't know how many fans there are, but they are out there, and it wouldn't be fair to them to just for me to just jump on the bandwagon and be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Matt Ward, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? You get what I mean. The whole purpose of the research is to learn and understand, and that's what we got to stick to. We got to stick to that as best as we can to ensure that knowledge is attained, and I myself can learn what not to do and what to do as a creator, a writer, game designer, so on, for all of you to be able to enjoy what I make. So you'll find links to Neckbeardia TTS Archive. It appears to be a text-to-speech type of thing, but hopefully the information, it looks like they got a swath of information from what I'm seeing right now on the screen. So hopefully the information will be very solid and less memey and comedic, and we could be able to put a good proper close to the Matt Ward arc and move on with Warhammer. So get your notes together for my post-research thoughts. This is a call to action. Comment, like, subscribe, follow, and let us finish the Matt Ward research.
Matthew Ward, usually shortened to Ultramarine Fanboy #1 or the Emperor of Scub. Damned be his name. Matt Ward the Scub Lord. That stupid fucking moron, or our spiritual liege, was one of the game's designers at Games Workshop and the Lord of Changing Fluff, the 420 no-scoper and the bringer of Mary Sue's. In truth, he was the whipping boy during a time when Games Workshop was being very poorly managed. Ward is an extremely controversial figure amongst neckbeards for a variety of reasons, enumerated ad nauseam below. It's probably telling that this page was one of the most fought over pages in the site's history. Seriously, the amount of scub this guy produces in general is astronomical, and bringing him up in the presence of the many factions this guy has spawned is liable grounds for flame wars, derp and rage. In 2014, Ward announced he was on sabbatical from Games Workshop. This was due to online death threats from morons, which prompted a big change in GW policy and also spontaneous street parties. Ward later emerged with a 3-book deal with a major publisher, so not Black Library. Then, behold, the great beast has come. Destroyer of verisimilitude. I'm a new player. Who is this guy? Matt Ward was a games designer for Games Workshop. That means he wrote codices and army books. He was responsible for both the rules themselves, the crunch, and the background behind the army, the fluff. Once, GW had a policy of putting the lead writer's name on the front of a codex. Despite all them being collaborations, TGS seething response to anything with Ward's name on it changed that, and now no single author is ever credited. Our mothers are extremely proud of this achievement. Why does TG hate this guy so much? The reason why TG hates this guy so much can be summarized into 2 different answers. The first and most painfully honest answer is because we need to blame someone for our woes, and he was the easiest target. The second answer is because he messed up a lot for many, as can be seen by the plethora of TGMA chapters here on 1D4chan. The true appeal of 40k is designing a unique, colorful army with a rich history and engaging heroes. Good players of 40k like to put a certain amount of themselves into their lovingly assembled and painted armies, and they like their army to reflect their own sensibilities and ideals. That's what makes an army truly belong to a player. That's what makes them special.
I'll give a little bit of that, and I'll give you a good example. Magic the Gathering. Right now, I'm not enjoying the fact that in Magic the Gathering, Universes Beyond is being extremely dominant of the system. I'm not a big fan of the Spider-Man set. I'm not really that big of a fan of Universe Beyond. There's a few cards here or there that were pretty good that I got my hands on. Final Fantasy, I would say, is the only set in which I did a little bit more purchases, buying the Summon Enchantment Saga cards and such. But the reason why I didn't make a big fuss over the Lord of the Rings, Warhammer, and Final Fantasy for the most part was because they had fantastical elements. They were fantasy basically. They were very fantasy-like. You know what I'm saying? Either if they're fantasy-like or fantasy itself, like in the case of Final Fantasy, you know what I'm saying, and Lord of the Rings, they didn't feel out of place. They didn't feel strange. You know what I'm saying? When you look at Spider-Man, it's not set in a fantastical world. It's set in New York City. And the thing is that in Magic the Gathering, you're supposed to be a magician, but in the early days. But today, now you're supposed to be a planeswalker. But in the early days of Magic, you were just two magicians dueling each other. That was your character avatar for the game, your flavor, your fantasy flavor, and you're casting spells and hitting people with like lightning bolts and summoning creatures to attack your opponent directly with and such. That was supposed to be the flavor. Then they introduced the planeswalkers, which is supposed to be like your best friend, your partner. I didn't get to experience planeswalkers at the start. I came in like 20 years later after Kamigawa. After the Kamigawa set, I came back to Magic to learn about all that stuff, including planeswalkers, and I was like, oh, they changed the whole entire fantasy flavor. So I understand where that first paragraph is actually coming from, because it feels weird being called a planeswalker. I'm used to being called a magician, a wizard, casting spells and such. You know what I mean, in terms of the fantasy flavor, and seeing how they have grown, jumping plane to plane to plane, having these planeswalkers walking from plane to plane, it's cute, it's nice and everything. But then now I'm a planeswalker that entered New York City, and Spider-Man is my ally. I need you all to think about that very carefully. I need you all to comprehend that. It's so out of place. And the thing about Universes Beyond, just to before we continue on, I liked it better when it was under Secret Lair and treated as a special treat. Street Fighter, Stranger Things, Walking Dead. I didn't have a problem when it was that. You know what I'm saying? Or or like Doctor Who and Warhammer, where they were just relegated to only commander decks. By making them sets, actual sets, and now Spider-Man is a standard set, which means it gets standard play in standard tournaments, standard level tournaments. It is off the mark. I gotta say, it's off the mark completely. And no amount of making planes like Thunder Junction, which is a Western plane with Western technology, New Capena with its 1950s technology, 1960s Chicago technology, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty with its sci-fi cyberpunk technology, Duskmorn with its 1980s horror technology. None of that can legitimately justify Spider-Man and New York City. Because you have cards like Taxi Driver, which is a literal taxi driver, and he's considered a human pilot. I need you to think of that, how that sounds. Okay, he's not a driver type, he's a pilot type, and he's piloting a taxi car. I need y'all to really think of how weird that is. So yeah, I totally could see where the fans are coming from here with Warhammer and things like this. You know what I'm saying? These sentiments and everything. You know, I totally could see from where they're coming from and why the changes are so out there. Thankfully, they don't have a Spider-Man set. Let us not give them ideas.
Lord does this too, but the difference is that he can write the official fluff and therefore gets to declare that his interpretation of said army is the correct one through the books he writes. Those heroes you may have liked before now seem like entirely new people, and the armies you liked before now seem to be an entirely different force you never wanted to play as. While this kind of change isn't anything new to 40k, the reason people single ward out more for it is because the other authors, most notably Phil Kelly, at least try to keep some of the themes in the new book so that they feel like the old army with a new shade of paint, rather than some alien force wearing the skin of the one you used to like. By those metrics, it's widely believed that Ward made some of the most broken books ever published by Games Workshop, which is really saying something, and that he systematically destroyed the fluff to fit his own childish and incoherent vision of the 40k and fantasy universes. Chief among his flaws is that his stories and rules utterly lack restraint. Yes, even by the over-the-top standards of Warhammer. For instance, in his Necrons book, he casually introduced a small faction that has the power to detonate any star in the galaxy with a click.
That's weird.
But the most rage-inducing codex he has made thus far is the Space Marines Codex, which explicitly states that all chapters, excluding a few aberrants, behave and think in exactly the same manner as his army, the Ultramarines. He spells out the organization patterns, the ideologies, who they revere and why, and just assumes that everyone else automatically accepts this radical shift in logic from thinking of the Blue Boys as all-rounder guys with a Roman motif to their best chapter ever. It's believed by some that the codex was supposed to be called Codex Ultramarines and was changed at the last minute by G-dubs. It still would have been stupid, but we could have easily written it off as macrog propaganda instead of spending 11 years bitching about it. Of course, players can still make their own factions and think up whatever backstories they want for them, but with Ward's fluff, they'll never measure up to his Smurfs. This could easily be written off as the bitter anger of the old veterans, and on some level, it is. But when analyzing Ward's works, and his reactions to works by other codex and fluff writers, patterns quickly emerge, and one cannot ignore this. The flaw is inescapable, and Ward enforces it in all his writing with sincerity and vigor.
Okay, so there's part of the problem. It's that he didn't. Even though he changed the Necrons, he invented a whole new group that basically near broke the game. So it's very easy. It's very easy, and again, I'll be going back to Magic again from time to time on this one because Universe Beyond is. But the thinking of saying, well, you still have your characters, you could play those. It doesn't make any sense to tell a person that, even as a means of dismissal, if the person plays their favorite faction but gets trounced by you who favors the group. So let me put it like this. Let's say it's Space Marines versus Ultramarines, okay? From what I'm reading here, and what TTS is reading here, if you're a fan of the Space Marines and you're playing the Space Marines, and you're taking on someone who has Ultramarines, and the Ultramarines always wins, like they're always beating the Space Marines, then yeah, the person who loves the Space Marines is going to be upset because how are they supposed to win if they're always going to lose? In other words, if they're going to lose 100% of the time to the Ultramarines, because Matt Ward decided to invent a Mary Sue group, he invented a Mary Sue team, and players who want to play the Mary Sue team because they want nothing but wins, and the people complain about the Ultramarines, and you're like, get good. It's completely missing the point. People are missing the point. You should be able to have Space Marines beat the Ultramarines. You know what I'm saying? You gotta have a near 50-50 percentage of winning. You know what I'm saying? What's the percentage? What is it? Let me go to Street Fighter, because it's very important. Because with Street Fighter, there's always gonna be like that one bad fighter purposefully made, and you're gonna have that one top tier fighter. But no matter what, every single fighter still has a chance to win if done right. Lily's a perfect example. Lily continues to sit around the F and D tiers in many tier lists, because she is lacking a lot of tactics that would allow her to win consistently against one of the S tiers, like say Ryu, one of the S tier fighters, let me see who's another good DJ, another good S tier fighter, and they're not doing a lot of tweaking on her, saying like she needs like a few extra couple of things in there that could help out, a couple more links and such, but she could still win games. The thing is that she could still win. You understand what I'm saying? Even though she's F and D tier in many tier lists, she can still win games even against the S tiers. You see what I'm saying? You gotta have a percentage of winning, a fair percentage that is satisfactory to players. And if you're gonna tell players that my Ultramarines is awesome, that I made is awesome, and the reason why they're awesome is because they're winning 100% of the time, and the Space Marines, a very popular group, is not winning a significant percentage of time against the Ultramarines, they're going to, the fans are going to get upset. They're gonna get upset, and no amount of saying, well, you still have the your Space Marines as a way of dismissing criticism does not help. It doesn't help Matt Ward, doesn't help the situation or anything. It's not fun if the older factions that came before a new faction ends up becoming obsolete and irrelevant. You can't just push out old features and old characters, to the curb in favor of new ones, just because you have the power to say so and declare it so. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying.
Just ignore Ward's fluff. You say I like your moxie, but the reality is this: players play fluffy armors. The canon lore does matter to them, and though try as they might to ignore the glaring fact that the canon fluff is forever altered by creating little pockets of what they believe should be the fluff, it all feels exactly as it sounds, like a personal delusion that ignores the facts. If you found out one day that your family actually doesn't exist, you could still maintain the belief that they do. but it will never be true. That's how it feels. And it is painful to play as these armies and to see their fluff change so much, or to be reminded constantly when you play against them. And Ward's codices have been very successful. Look at the number of people playing Grey Knights, Blood Angels, and Necrons these days, ruthlessly exploiting every bit of cheese they can find and purchasing all the new, shiny, overpriced models for them. Besides all that, Ward's other major problem is that he just isn't a tactician.
Okay, let me before we continue on, I know I'm pausing a lot, but let me just give a quick addendum regarding Street Fighter 6. Let's put that in comparison. Street Fighter 6 adds characters all the time. The latest character is Sagat. Sagat is a very popular character, but Sagat didn't receive any level of design from the designers, especially the ones who were specifically making Sagat. You know, they didn't fanboy Sagat to the point where all the other fighters became completely near irrelevant or near obsolete. Capcom goes through all the fighters and do all balance tweaks for Sagat, and they didn't lean into Sagat in the manner of we're gonna make him the the big guy over everybody else, and then all of a sudden you have everyone just playing Sagat, and nobody else. If that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Another good example, they added SNK fighters in Street Fighter 6. For the first time ever, the mainline series had actual SNK fighters. Mai and Terry from the King of Fighters series. The Fatal Fury series, that's their origin. Capcom didn't do like this, where they gave them all these powerful, strengths and buffs and whatnot, that would render the original Street Fighter cast and the new cast from Street Fighter 6, pointless to play. You know what I'm saying? So I get what the I just want to addendum that because I knew what I was getting at with it. I just needed a better phrasing for it. So there we go.
Only rarely does he try to write factions using any kind of thought to dictate their battle tactics. The closest he's come to writing military doctrine was the Necron Codex, and instead maintains a tell, don't show policy. That is, usually, he'll just tell the player that somebody is a tactical genius without anything to show for it. The majority of Ward's heroes lead head first, sacrificing all in frontal assaults that could be circumvented with more ingenuity. Or, as another example, he tells us that Manius Calgar is a patient tactical genius who considers the danger of an incoming projectile before taking cover. The image painted in the average person's mind in that case is one of Calgar analyzing a falling bomb until it strikes him in the head and explodes, at which point he decides, yes, that one was dangerous. I probably should have taken cover from that one. The above average person would also probably understand that the metaphor was supposed to mean that Calgar is ready to take a blow when needed. The biggest offender by far of Ward's tell, don't show policy is called a Drago, the Grey Knight's Supreme Grandmaster, whose main personality trait is supposed to be badass. Without rhyme, reason, or feasible explanation, Drago simply exists as this whirlwind of enemy destroying fiction in his codex. He pops in and out of the war, wrecking everything, everywhere, without so much as a minute of exposition or explanation. Drago is a concept, a meaningless one without any emotional impact. He's not a person or anything to which the average person can even attempt to relate, because all Ward can write about is how badass he's supposed to be. Ward has simply declared him the best ever, and he has done so in canon. So it is. Also, this isn't helped by the fact that the Grey Knights are already a very tell, don't show chapter. Ever since they were introduced, every amazing feat they perform has been kept under a whole chest full of locks and keys. As for Ward's crunch, it goes without saying that it is unbalanced, with several armies he wrote, read, Grey Knights and Necrons, essentially flattening everything from here to hell. But the main issue is that they're essentially all over the place in terms of rules. Although Ward could be excused for this in light of GW's tendency to force new sets on people for the sake of profit, the most damning example of his crunch-making skills isn't in 40k, but in fantasy. When he wrote the 7th edition Demons of Chaos Codex, it was so overpowered, so
Nah,
unbalanced.
not a good game
that
designer
it
either,
practically
huh?
destroyed the edition's overall balance and forced G-Dubs to build a whole new edition to even begin to staunch the bleeding. Whether you decide Ward deserves the rage and hate he gets, write it off as a sad consequence of his earlier work, pity him for having to work for GW, or simply don't give a shit is entirely your call. As ever, on TG, we urge you to make your own decisions. Either way, he's not the best writer they have, but he's also not the worst, and his reputation will follow him in his endeavors from now until time immemorial, for good or for ill. Of course, hating his extreme fuck-ups in lore and rule writing is one thing. Sending him angry emails and trying to find where he lives is another.
Don't do that.
Grace.
Don't ever
To
do
be
that.
fair, Matt can write reasonable fluff, like the World Engine, which this former Necron player admits is awesome despite ripping off Star Wars in several ways. The World Engine is just a renamed Death Star, and the Rebel Flare Space Marines have to destroy it. Castellan Crow, who even the severely butt-fed Demon Hunters now GK player has to admit is pretty fucking cool, or Trazin the Infinite. And then there's Pirate's Folly. But for every good piece of fluff he's done, there's a bunch of Calder Dragas and Cornet Knights to sift through, and in the eyes of a staggering plurality on TG, that's a big part of why he's disliked. Another point, he's able to create crunch that is fine on its own, like the Space Marine Codex, or Necrons before 6th edition buffed them to the stratosphere, and perfectly balance against his other books, a trait he shares with Vetuk. The special rules he writes are usually interesting, creative, and useful, making his armies very distinct from the others, and capable of doing things nothing else in the game can. You know, things like all Assault Marine Blood Angels, Furioso's Blood Talons and Magna Grapple, teleporting Dread Knights or Necron Minchical Scarabs, Entropic Strike and Deep Striking in the enemy movement phase, usually adding more fun into the game, albeit at the cost of balance against other armies. In fact, he helped create other armies' special rules, like the Elder Battle Focus. Unwardified codices of 6-7e tend to change those interesting things into something mundane, simple and often less powerful, sometimes to the point of uselessness. Rip Minchicles and Assault Troops, or removing them entirely. However,
instead of just
the fairest thing
instead of
to
just
level
make the
aboard
cactus
is
bounce the
fact
first
that,
time.
in his absence, GW hasn't
That's
stopped
not good.
making shitty decisions with their intellectual property, and arguably started long before his tenure. This tells us it was less about Ward's flaws seeping into and contaminating the game, insofar as it was his employer using him as a scapegoat to take the heat off their profit-driven cheesemongering. Yes, they needed someone to write these abominations, but every writer at GW has problems writing books at some point. In essence, Ward was the perfect author for GW's shift to an all-SM production across all lines. His admittedly bad writing gave us someone to blame and, at the same time, gave GW the sales burst they desired but couldn't figure out how to justify, lest their moves become noticeable by the community and a substantial revenue risk. Oh, and he also had a hand in the plot of Battlefleet Gothic, Armada II, and was a creative consultant for Vermintide 2. It tells something about 4chan and the internet that there doesn't seem to be much mention of that fact when the script is so widely praised. Odds are you've just found out by reading this very sentence. Factions of Ward. The various viewpoints on Ward can't get back to the email at nickbeardiacontact@gmail.com. Now let's get back to the video. Factions of Ward. The various viewpoints on Ward can be broken up into 7 factions. Like most of TGS interdepartmental bickering, this is by no means a comprehensive list, and the various factions can come in various flavors of this guy and that guy. Some would argue more of the latter, and others more of the former. The Old Guard maintain that Ward is the Antichrist.
That's... Wow. This doesn't help, quite honestly. This doesn't help. Creating factions regarding Ward, viewpoints of Ward, honestly. How does this help your hobby, guys? How does this help the hobby? You know? How does this help Warhammer overall? By factioning yourselves like this, you know? Jeez. Games Workshop for the most part does have a hand on it, but Matt Ward should have also caught wind that that they were using him too. But this isn't helping either. It's not helping either on your end. Ah, jeez, the old guard, the vet gamer.
Loudly complain when he's writing a new codex and vehemently hates his fluff. Will fight to the bitter end decrying that Ward's rules are overpowered, but is notable mostly for his utter hatred of Ward's fluff and complete disregard of previously established canon. The most devout of them focus their hatred on the Necron Codex, more than simple alterations isolated to the Necron fluff and the 6-8 Codex. They vehemently remind people that in messing with the past, Ward had completely changed Warhammer 40k history, affecting such things as the origins of Nulls, Necron motivation, their battles with the Elder, and due to the notorious Allies chart, changing the very manner in which every race interacts. The vet gamer differs from the old guard in that whilst the old guard hates for primarily the fluff, the vet gamers hate him for the crunch. They see Ward's nonsense as indicative of the power creep that the game suffered for quite some time, often citing Warhammer 40k's flagrantly game-breaking Blood Angels Codex at launch, or Warhammer Fantasy's Demons Codex as a sign of where everything went wrong.
Wow. That's insane. Hey, Master Splinter, how you doing today? Just going through Warhammer research. This is a disaster. What a disaster! Oh my gosh! Corporate greed combined with arrogant writer is a terrible combination. I could tell you that much. It's proven. This is proving to be a terrible combination. Oh my gosh. Dang. This is oh boy.
Indifferent. These are people who have no opinion as to whether Ward is good or bad. They are neutral on this subject, and just want people to shut the fuck up or too ignorant to realize how awful he is. The crunch defenders hold that while Matt Ward does write atrocious fluff, his crunch is fair and balanced. They also defend the viewpoint that ultimately, crunch is more important than fluff because you can ignore bad fluff. Also known as what players, the counterculture, love Ward on the grounds that the old guard hate him too much. TGS version of hipsters. The cult of Ward.
Really?
These are people who agree
Hipsters?
Ward's older books suck but believe he's getting better, and all the suck of the older books were over-exaggerated, or even a good writer now. The Ward bearers, either an extremist faction of the cult of Ward or fanatics who worshipped him anyway. The direct opposite of the old guard. The Wardenites worship Ward as a god. Following the revered Book of Ward, they are identified by defending Ward. But whereas Crunch defenders only defend Crunch and either agree with the old guard or the indifferent in regards to fluff, Wardenites defend both. Whereas the counterculture like him because it makes them look edgy. The Wardenites hold that he is legitimately good. Often quotes from the Book of Ward, usually from the Crudux, and the Manabuld. Matthew Ward Deliverus. They hold Robin Cruddace as the Great Satan. It is suspected that the Wardenites have a strong power base in the Necrons and Tyrannid communities. It should be noted, like most religions, there are different sects within the cult of Ward. The theological divides between them mostly concerning Codex. Grey Knights. The sects supporting Grey Knights are also divided amongst pro and anti-Drago sects. And now recently these sects have become even more diverse thanks to a certain passage in the New Demons Codex. It's also worth noting that if a member of the Old Guard and a member of the Cult of Ward meet, there will be blood spilled. Such is also true of a Vet Gamer and Crunch Defender meeting. Matt Ward's writing highlights. This image is considered by most to be tacit proof that Matt Ward is going to a very special place in hell when he dies. For a while Matt Ward worked for Games Workshop and, initially, his works were not too bad. Over time the problems arose. Yet Games Workshop kept trusting him with more important projects. They seem to be under the misconception that Matt Ward was their best writer when his popularity, that many people kept using his armies, was more likely due to three things. They got him to write for their most popular armies, with the players choosing to put up with Ward's flawed writing rather than give up their army and throw away the money time they invested. The power gamers loved his armies as they were overpowered at first, and the newcomers to the hobby were ignorant of the previous state of the game, so they could have been unaware of how unbalanced it had become and how often Ward ruined the continuity of the game and retconned so much previously established lore. 2002-2007 Ward authors a bunch of Lord of the Rings books. Revisionist neckbeards now.
Sorry, had to pause that. Yeah, that's that was my case up here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know just how damaging he would did. That wasn't until I got to Snipe and Whip channel about the codexes that they mentioned Matt Ward messed the whole thing up, and that's what caught my attention. I truly didn't fully comprehend. But if I hadn't been tipped off by that in my previous research, we wouldn't be here right now with this. I would have probably still kept on going with the Necrons, thinking as a newcomer, Necrons are all awesome. There's nothing wrong with them. But that's not how it works here. I got to try and find out what's going on. Because the whole point of the research is to understand mess ups more so than just as much as successes. Very important to always understand. That's how you got to do that. That's how you do your research. So yeah, I was definitely here at that this camp here. The newcomers to the hobby were ignorant of the previous state of the game, and that's why also as a game designer, I wanted to learn about the game itself, and that's what led me to here. So yeah. Crazy. It's just unmitigated crazy how he's both a writer and a game designer like me. So he has the same advantages I do as being able to write a story and design a game accordingly. And it looks like he just went into a different set of train tracks. With both his writing and his game design, without taking into consideration, fans, continuity, lore, and so on. Not very good. Not very good.
Like to point to them as damning proof of Ward's madness in its infancy, but mostly they're just forgettable. During this time, he also worked for White Dwarf, his only real defining feature being his fondness for playing the evil armies in battle reports. In hindsight, this was probably a sign of things to come. He also creates the rules for the Mumical, the most fucking ridiculous unit ever, which can destroy entire armies in its movement. The Mumical is eventually revealed to be so broken, and included in an army that already had its share of cheese, that it signals the beginning of the end for the Lord of the Rings system. On a Warhammer fantasy note, 7th edition Orcs and Goblin book, with really stupid fluff mistakes and the appearance of a wizard from magic colleges in Gorbad Siege thousands of years before their foundation. He also teamed up with the long-lost Anthony Reynolds to write the 6th edition Wood Elves Army book. The fluff was passable and the crunch had a few gems. Thanks to Reynolds. 2008 Ward's descent into scub and infamy begins with Army book, Demons of Chaos. A work of such apocalyptic cheesemongering, it is widely credited for single-handedly breaking WHFB. No army could come close to beating it. Dark Elves and Vampire counts, accepted as second and third powerful in the rankings, generally had to struggle to grab draws, and the failing attempts at power creep to match eventually broke the entire system so hard that fantasy required a hard reset in the form of the massive shakeup that was 8th edition. Most people write it off as an overeager premiere, and whether this was Ward's own work or management fiat remains a point of conjecture. It was bad enough that a balance patch of sorts had to be made in an attempt to keep the meter intact. It didn't work. This might have been where GW started to think that broken rules lead to increased sales. See Elder in 7th edition for a concrete example of that. At the expense of their core demographic, though later on that just became their mission statement. Either way, Ward didn't seem to get into hot company water over all this, and would go on to write several other books for worse than better. In that order, the saving grace is the fluff, which in general is quite good, putting chaos in a better written and more grounded light compared to Ward's contemporaries. Ward is instrumental in the creation of the Warhammer 40,000 rulebook, 5th edition rulebook. While the crunch is more or less accepted, much of the fluff openly contradicts previous works, sisters being all but retconned out of the universe for example, and there's considerable attempts to promote certain armies over the others. Ward writes Codex, Space Marines for 5th edition. Thousands of neckbeards cry out in terror and are silenced.
Oh my gosh, the drama.
Work mechanically stable. It comes at a terrible cost. Ward unilaterally decides to retcon massive amounts of Space Marine fluff and enshrine the Ultramarines as the gold standard for a proper Space Marine. The new fluff reads like Ultramarines fanfic, portraying the Smurfs as second to the Emperor in physical attribution damned near all regards, and that all Space Marines view Manius Calgar as their spiritual liege. It is about this time that Ward's prejudices against certain chapters start to emerge for the first time. 2009 Ward writes War of the Ring with Jeremy Vertuk, a completely different style of game for the Lord of the Rings model lineup, and
he didn't just tap into Warhammer, he tapped into others,
which will help clean up after the mistakes of Demons of Chaos. The book isn't bad, but the fact the Lord of the Rings hasn't been popular since 2001 to 2003. Cheesy units on certain sides, elves for example, the book having its fair share of mistakes, mostly typos, and the fact that the system was so radically different from the previous versions, it played like a cross between the Lotta strategy game and Warhammer Fantasy, prevented it from becoming all that popular. Ward is sent back to writing 40k and fantasy. 2010 Ward doubles down on his heresy with Codex, Blood Angels. Any and all pretense of restraint is dropped and the Codex is loaded with deep striking land raiders, flying librarian dreadnoughts, and dykes that can unscrew a Baden's head and shit down his neck. Ward devises new weapons and abilities for the Blood Angels, giving them evocative names like Blood Fists, Blood Talons, Blood Reavers, Blood Crozeuses, Blood Lances, Blood Boil, Bloodshed Bolts, and Blood Strike missiles. That's right, Blood Strike. See Codex. Wolves. The fluff, while not the hate crime against neckbeards his previous work was, still manages to inspire rage by having the Necrons and Blood Angels become super secret pony princess unicorn best friends forever, if only temporarily. As fate would have it, this work will not survive the next edition too well. 2011 War gives birth to Codex.
Okay, just to go back here, because I find that funny. Blood fist, blood talent, blood as an adjective. I wouldn't really hold that very hard on Matt Ward on that one. I'll give a good example. Rumiko Takahashi's Inuyasha. There was an arc in Inuyasha where seven bad guys, they were like a whole team. All their names ended in Maru, if I remember correctly. You know, every single one of the enemies that Inuyasha and Kagome had to face off had Maru at the end of their name. And Rumiko Takahashi's a legend, so I would give him a pass on that one. You know, with the theme naming, is it overkill? It's a fair criticism to say that's overkill, but honestly, that will happen with a lot of creators, and yes, myself included. But it doesn't need to be overkill like that. I find what he did there far more hilarious than outrageous scream.
Survive the next edition too well. 2011 War gives birth to Codex, Grey Knights, fusing the awful fluff and limitless cheese of his two previous works into a single abomination. While Siffelman sweep tournament after tournament, Ritterfags rage impotently about Calder Drago, Cornet Knights, and the unapologetic rape of over 10 years of canon. Ward co-authors the new White Dwarf release of Codex, Sisters of Battle. He shows incredible restraint by giving the sisters some respectable fluff, but compensates by basically reverting the witch hunters to 2E. The Force org chart is gutted out, allies are removed, and the best strategies are promptly eliminated, with a bit of help from the Nerfer-in-Chief Robin Cruddance. Ward next turns his fell hand to the Necron. He ups the ante again by completely rewriting their backstory, presumably while humming to himself with a shit-eating grin plastered to his face. The Crons are now insane Tomb Kings in spas who want your body. Oh, and they turned the Cetan into Pokemon. Yay. Mechanics wise, the release fares surprisingly well, trading away some of the more egregious cheese of 3E. Monolith Death March, in order to eliminate its shittiest design flaws. Phase out. Some argue that it changes Necrons to the point that it would have been easier to change their name altogether, and some people could have taken up Necrons because they liked them as they were. Anyway, in its few improvements, the fluff manages to dodge Matt Ward's greatest flaw. 2012 Matt Ward teams up with Adam Troke and Jeremy Vetuk to create Warhammer 40. 0006th edition. The whole rulebook promptly turns Codex, Necrons and Codex Grey Knight into rape trains with no brakes.
What the hell?
Though they are later surpassed by TAU and Elder. Every single far TGUI instantly regrets ever thinking the Space Tomb Kings were balanced in the first place. We're talking cheese like 9 flyers in a 1,500 points list with flying dedicated transports that don't kill passengers when they crash. What the fuck? Among other rage-worthy things of note include massive buffs to already broken beyond reason armors, highly abusable mechanics resulting in severely limited builds for HQ choices, tool for challenges or suffer, and the Space Marine segments of the fluff being full of yet more Mad Ward porn. 2013 Mad Ward Rewrite Army Book, Demons of Chaos 480. Many neckbeards commit suicide before the official product announcement is out to save themselves from the predicted cheese. Many fantasy power gamers also ritually sacrifice themselves in anticipation of a gargantuan nerfing. In the book, Matt Ward nerfs all the overpowered units of the previous army book, puts a lot of random effects, random magic items, and does things such as taking one of the worst units of the previous book, Beast of Burgle, improve it and reduce its cost by 40 points each, or giving demons one of the best cannons in the game. Overall, they ended up as one of the better armies, but nowhere near the overpowered rape train they were last edition.
Really?
Aside
Again?
from some questionable
Dang.
fluff, it's not all that bad. Matt Ward heads the team that made the 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy update for the High Elves. It's really, really good. No, really, the Ever Queen and her units were added back in and come off as pretty awesome. Tyrion retains his awesome wartime skills while being less of a Mary Sue, being given a short temper and occasional moodiness. The book also fixes a lot of the cheese that the High Elves got away with in the older book. Like every time we cast spells it's irresistible force and we always strike first with freaking great weapons. The fluff is good, although it's arguable how much Ward is responsible for the fluff, since it's mostly copy-pasted from earlier editions, and the army is pretty well balanced, both internally and externally, except for one thing, Banner of the Mythific.
That's actually interesting. The copy-paste part, since it's mostly copy-pasted from earlier editions, was this Matt Ward's attempt to use the sort, the earlier editions as a means to try to meet halfway with the players, and he probably botched that up or something, or was he or trying to get into the good graces of older players while trying to like have his cake and eat it too type of thing. That type of situation. I'm very curious as to what his what it is that he was trying to go for with that. You know what I'm saying? That's a very interesting observation that was made there. Copy pasting doesn't help much, quite honestly. I mean, but we already seen what happens when Matt Ward writes freely too. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
World Dragon 2 plus ward save against anything magical. And you know what army has only magical attacks? That's right. Demons of Chaos. Most people feel this is blatantly unfair. Hell, most reviews went out of their way to point it out, because it's just that egregious. But a small number chuckle lightly every time it comes up, because they remember the days when demons always won, yet the previous versions gave complete immunity to spells, were cheaper, and there are currently a few spells and rules that ignore ward saves in 8th edition. This one also makes all dragons within 12 stubborn, but that applies to allied and enemy dragons. Furthermore, only one unit in the army benefits from it if the character carrying the banner joins them, thus rendering those complaints somewhat invalid. Writing the Codex. Elder supplement about Craft World Ianden. It's 2 pages of crunch with the rest being fluff for $40. Said fluff consists of turning Ianden into a clone of Beeltan, forgetting how the Infinity Circuit works, retconning more or less everything involving in it, and turning Ianden's leadership into incompetents who didn't think the Tyranids were a serious threat. That said, a number of Elder players loved it because it's one of the few fluff bits that doesn't treat the Elder as the universe's punching
Oh, that's
bag,
not
which
good.
is far more than what can be said about most of their fluff, and gave them a little street
So
cred.
basically,
Writing
he
the
was throwing
Dark Elves
crumbs
8th
and
edition update. And
throwing little
according to
crumbs at the
White Dwarf
others.
is now GW's go-to guy for all things Elven and WFB. Good news. The crunch is passable. Dark Elves have army-wide always strike first like High Elves do while retaining High Elf hatred. Also murderous prowess with some units getting buffed significantly with slight nerfs to balance them. Witch Elves. They also gain a glass cannon sea monster that doesn't have any rules to let it move through water. Justified in fluff so it can't escape its handlers. The bad news is Matt Ward like usual rewrote ignored some of the established fluff to suit his tastes. Though in this case it's very minor. For example, Clark Errand is the Beastmaster's city instead of Kerandka like it was in every previous edition. They both deal in slaves, but Clark Errand has most of the monsters now, even though, or maybe because it's also the Dark Elves' main shipyard, leaving Kerandka out in the cold, literally in the fluff. Malekith also gets an ex-wife. While not badly written, it seems out of character for him and he never had one before. Another change is the fluff suggesting incest between Malekith and Morathi has been removed. Now it's changed that Morathi is wet for her stepson, Tyrion, who she thinks to use to reincarnate Inarian in a magic ritual, to name a few. He had a hand in the new Wood Elves update. The fluff is good, though there have been changes to some of the characters, such as Ariel having a dark side and being more gullible. She's manipulated by her archenemy Morga, as well as Morathi. The personality of each incarnation of Orion is influenced by the person sacrificed to revive him. And Score the Falconer is no more. The heavy hand of Thorpian writing is also present, jacking off chaos at the expense of the previously established elf canon. Crunchwise the Wood Elves are arguably better at shooting, and definitely close combat, than before. But there were some major nerfs handed out to a few things. Dryads, treemen, and especially their magic items. The lore of Athel Loren is also gone, making the race of isolationists feel more like a race of bipolar copycats. Writing Codex. Sentinels of Terror. He was a part of a team effort to write the book and put in charge of writing the fluff. Mostly talks about things anybody who has ever read anything about the Imperial Fist would know from other writings. Emphasizes on their pride and stubbornness being both their biggest strength and weakness. Went a little too far on the assaulting when the Fist has best known for deference fighting and Centurion squads are awesome. Gotta push the new stuff. And the fluff does only focus on one crusade, confusing them a bit with the Black Templars, though they are a successor chapter, and killing off their chapter master. 2014.
So, um, what was it's very easy to sit there and say egotism and all that stuff, but what was he trying to get at in doing all this? Like, this is actually far worse. Not only Warhammer, but other games as well. What was he looking for in his in these game designs? Well, his take on game designing and storytelling, because this is beyond disaster. It is beyond disaster. What has been done here? You can't just go into a property and just rewrite everything. And again, you know, I'm not looking the distilled, this distilled, watered down thing of, oh, he was egotistical. He loves Mary Sue. Like, what was his thought process? What was he thinking? What, you know what I'm saying? Like, what was the end game? What was the goal? What did he want out of this? It's very important as a writer and as a game designer. When you're doing writing and game design, you do have to ask yourself, what are you looking to get out of it? And it's not money. It can't just be only money. That's an oversimplification. That's the word I was looking for. Saying that was ego, money, those are oversimplifications. What was the thought process when he was handed all of the outlines, all of the charts, all of the breakdowns of these characters, these games, Lord of the Rings, Warhammer, all of this stuff? What was that thought process that he said, I'm going to make these characters change? Like, when he decided to change the Necrons and retcon them, what is the reason behind it? What's the rationale? What did he see in the original Necrons that he felt needed to be retconned and redo? What did he see in the Space Marines that he decided to create Ultramarines? You see what I'm saying? Like, what was he seeing that I don't think any of us are really seeing? We're not seeing what he's seeing. You get what I'm saying? We're seeing what is the final product, and it is a mess. But what was he seeing when he received the materials and decided to start writing and game designing those characters? That's the question that should be asked. What was the rationale behind it? What was wrong with the Space Marines that the Ultramarines were created? What was wrong with the Necrons that they had to be retconned? That's the big question. What was wrong? What was it that you didn't like about it? I think I think that's the crux of the situation that we're not getting here. It's very easy to point out the final product and saying where everything went wrong. Everything now becomes speculation into why he would do it. But unless somebody can legitimately see Matt Ward and ask him, what was the rationale in your decision making? Like, what did you see was wrong with the Necrons that you chose to do this? Then we could get the answer. And I'll give a perfect example. I think his name is David S. Goyer. I know his last name is Goyer. He's the one who wrote Man of Steel, the script for Man of Steel. And I wish I could pull it up on the YouTubes. I'm not sure if it's on the YouTubes or anything. But in an interview, a documentary, I don't know if it was from a documentary or anything, but he explained why he took out the Superman's red trunks, his red shorts, his famous red underwear that we all like to poke and make fun of. He actually gave a rationale to it. And he actually explained his reasoning. What he saw was wrong with the red pants, the red shorts, that he removed it from Superman in Man of Steel. And it was such a weird explanation. It made no sense. what he saw was wrong with Superman having red pants, having his red trunks over the tights. It completely missed the point of why Superman and Batman and others dressed like that, especially in the early age, in the Golden Age and Silver Age of well, to this day, quite honestly, many of them still do, like, still wear their trunks over their tights. Part of that reason, and I'll explain to you why, is because of is because they're supposed to represent the old vaudeville days, the old circus acts of the strongman. The strongman would wear trunks, wrestler trunks like that. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it'll be like a Tarzan type outfit. Sometimes it'll be with over tights. But the whole point was to show the physique of the strongman, like his full physique, and like he's supposed to be naked, like in the old Roman and Greek statues where they were all naked, but you saw like their muscles and they always had these postures and positions of human condition, the human physique. A perfect example, Michelangelo's David, very famous statue. He's butt naked, but it's all about the human physique, the physique of the human. And since, of course, you can't have, your circus acts and your vaudeville acts be butt naked to express, the human physique and the strength that comes with it, they wear the trunks, the underwear type thing, saying sometimes with tights and so on. And they would go and they would do things like bend the barbell, to as part of the circus act to show, and their muscles would flex when they do that. And that's what Superman and Batman. That's why those the heroes dressed in that to express the physique of the human body, the human physique, the human condition. That's the whole point of the outfit. That's why they wear it to this day. Superman wears that to this day because he is Superman. He does superhuman feats. And him wearing the trunks is supposed with his muscular physique is supposed to have us see the muscular the actions. We see the muscles flex out and everything, and we see his body go like, and then you see his back just bulge out and everything. That's the whole point of the trunks. That's where it came, where it comes from. But Goyer explained the reason why he took the trunks out was absolutely dumb. And that's why Superman didn't wear trunks in Man of Steel and looked weird, dressed the way he was. So, that's what I'm seeing, and that's what I mean about getting into, trying to understand. And that's why I explain about Matt Ward. What is it that he saw in the Necrons, all these characters that he felt had to be either retconned or removed or changed or altered? What was he seeing that we don't see? Because what everybody is seeing is not what he sees, apparently. Whatever he saw that he wrote on paper is not executed in actuality, in final product. And people notice it. So that's a very big question to ask in that.
In going by the writer's trays below, it looks like Ward may have had a hand in the New Dwarfs Codex for WFB. For example, it has good balance, but like the last book, still allows them to field a potentially cheesy gunline army. The fluff is mostly unchanged, though the few new bits make heavy use of the special characters and a few uses of the word alas. It turns out that Ward quietly left GW on May 2014. With the Wood Elves being his last army book. The exact circumstances behind his departure are unknown, as is how nobody knew about this until it was posted on his LinkedIn profile 3 months after it happened. But seeing that Robin Cradace is still employed at GW, it's not likely that the quality of his work had anything to do with it. Whatever issues there were around Mad Ward, some people took their hatred of him too far. One reason for his resignation was incoming real-life death threats that he received.
Again,
Grim
don't
luck
do that.
indeed. This adds a dark new twist to hiding the author's names. Perhaps it was to protect Matt Ward from potential attempts on life rather than to try and get one over on the fans. Actually, he's also come out in revealing that he's written parts of the End Times, WHFB's super huge apocalypse event that's pretty much Storm of Chaos II, Electric Boogaloo, taking special responsibility for writing the Kane book, where he writes the last swan song for all the elves he wrote for. Predictably, it's the most scub book with some of the most insane plot twists out there. Malekith is the one true Phoenix King. Teclis was playing everyone along Tyrion as a murderous arsehole. But considering what followed with Thankful and Archaon, some have to consider just who exactly was behind the writing. His blog does indeed list that he did work on End Times Archaon as well as Vermintide. Our liege has returned. Clench your butts everyone and hide
What a
your
timeline.
sisters. 2016 on his Twitter. Ward stated he's been rehired by Games Workshop as you can see here. Feel free to start whining now. 2017 when Petter writes a letter to GW whining about how wearing animal fur is wrong in a setting with literally all of the blood, gore,
What the heck? Where did
violence,
Peter happen?
and just generally not being nice to anything and everything. Ward responds with the following tweet. While not quite redeeming all his past misdeeds, it comes pretty close. Who knew Ward was such a marvelous fucking troll? Fans blame Ward for Gilliman's cheesy return, with the hilariously overpowered rules Gulliman has gotten and the fact that he now leads the Imperium once again. It's fair to say to suspect Ward. Turns out it was Phil Kelly. Who knew, which explains why the Imperial Guard is overpowered. Ballum keep complaints in the cheese section. 2018 signs with the same literary agent who dealt with George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. 2019 his first epic fantasy novel, A Legacy of Ash, is released to rave reviews. The TV rights are already rumored to be hotly contested by various outlets. Seriously, don't bother the man. He no longer has anything to do with G-dubs, and even then, wasn't at fault for every law rape under the sun.
That word again. I said it before, and I'll say it again right off the start. Don't send death threats. Okay? Don't send death threats to creators. Alright? You accomplish nothing. You help no one. And you solve nothing. I have to repeat the word nothing again. Sorry, I couldn't rhyme that. But you are not helping your fandom, your hobby, your fellow gamers and players alike by doing that. Stop it. Okay. I can go into a whole host of reasons why you should stop it, but I'm just saying, stop it. Okay. You're not helping. Yeah, this clearly is a combination of Games Workshop and Matt Ward together. I don't think that Games Workshop brought Matt Ward in with the intent to scapegoat him. I think that's conspiracy theory. They brought him in because they thought that he was really good. They thought that he could bring to the table something different. They gave him carte blanche, and they just rolled with it and took zero consideration to the ramifications of storytelling and such. It must most likely, for all I know, that might not be like the original executives, the ones who like built the game and thus were the actual, and thus they were able to monitor the game design and such. I need to see the business side of Games Workshop to get a good handle as to the change of the guard, what executives was overseeing from the start and who was overseeing when Matt Ward was in control. I think that would be very important to look at. The reason why I say that is because TTS, this whole entire setup, whoever this source is that TTS is relying on, or sources, is pointing out that Games Workshop was hands-on and saying that it was all a conspiracy. In fact, let me see his description here. Let me look at his description and see if he sourced anything. He did not source anything here. It looks like he sourced nothing. So I'm not sure entirely how much of that, especially given the way that was written, how much of that is actually legit, and how much of it is hyperbole and other is rhetoric. You know what I'm saying? It's very easy to just jump on the bandwagon of anger and hatred and everything, and not consider where the information is coming from. You know, I don't know if that's if the sources are even actually legit, because it's not in the description below. So it's very easy to just say anything and everything without any regards. But if indeed Games Workshop and sometimes it most likely is the executives, if the executives were definitely as hands on as Matt Ward was towards the with regards to the entirety. I am very curious as to who the executives were before Matt Ward came in and who were the executives while Matt Ward was working on it, to get a good idea of who was show running, who's running the whole show and everything, who's being the showrunner, because Matt Ward was clearly picked to be the showrunner, and all of his decisions, again, is coming off of hyperbole and anger from the fans, and that's all well and good, because again, like I said, the fans are spending money, investing time and money that they could have spent elsewhere on a hobby that they like, and it should be respected at all costs. I'm kind of that was a lot to unpack, because that was so many different situations throughout, not just only in Warhammer but also in like Lord of the Rings. He tapped into so many. He tapped into a couple other games and also messed some of that up. This is why. As I pointed out earlier, what was it that he saw in the games that he felt he had to make these changes? That is really the crux of the question here. Without getting that answer, we'll never understand the direction he was trying to go. We'll never understand his intent, because, well, thanks to certain parties doing certain things they shouldn't be doing to writers and creators, he's going to never talk. It's clear that he's never going to talk. He's never going to put himself out in the public. And nice job breaking it, because we're never going to understand. We're not going to and by extension see how try to understand not only why he did it, but also try and figure and understand and maybe even figure out how it could be fixed. But I don't think Games Workshop will be interested in fixing it, because they would have already done so after Matt Ward had left. Yeah. This is summing up to be not a very fun game in the end. When you have a writer and a creator do what was done. I'm not even sure if it's really now worth me to invest the money into buying, an orc faction. Now, I'm not saying I'm gonna abandon the whole thing. I mean, I still want to get some of these Warhammer books, especially on the Necron side, which I found very interesting. Which I found, and maybe even some orc books as well. But I don't know if it's really worth playing the game if the game is broken, or if it's so imbalanced that that me playing orcs is always going to yield a loss, no matter what, at every turn. That's I want to have fun, and not only that, but I want to be able to play a game without this. You know what I'm saying? Lording over. Like, I want to just play the game, and I don't want to hear about Matt Ward. You know what I mean, or the disasters that come from it. And I'm sure many Warhammer players are looking for the same as well. But I think this really hurts a newcomer like me to want to be more engaging with the game and the franchise as a whole. Does that mean I'm going to abandon the research? No, I'm going to keep doing the research. This is fascinating research. Come on. This is fantastic research. This is a great lesson to learn on what not to do as both a writer and a game designer. But engagement, yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping that this that what Matt Ward and the executives of Games Workshop have done while during his tenure did has not done irreparable damage for me in terms of engagement. You know, once I can like get the budget to fully engage Warhammer proper, you know, that it doesn't push me away or turn me away from it. You know what I mean? Because this is a pretty wonderful build. This is a very wonderful creation overall. Like this is a very fun thing. I really love the orcs. I can't stop thinking about the orcs. You know. Sure, I'm not researching the orcs anymore and moved on to other factions. But the orcs are, you know. I love their premise, their concept. They're party dudes, and fighting is their party time. I love the premise of that. You know what I mean? And that's what that's what got me, more interested in Warhammer, doing more research into it. You know, when you come up with something awesome and cool. So yeah, this is it. No more Matt Ward research. Big thanks to everybody, and I mean everybody, who was able to bring up any and all possible information on Matt Ward, and whatever information we could get out of this, because like I said, as a creator, as a writer, I got to I got to be able to respect the best I can people's money and time and deliver good quality products and such. Got to be able to respect that, and I wish many creators would heed that. Would heed that. Creators, executives, especially, executives up in the upper echelons of many corporations. Saying everybody across the board that puts pen to paper, that puts product to market, to respect the customers' time and money, and the fans that are willing to make a hobby out of our works. We have to be respectful of that, because that's money they could be spending on taking care of their bills, their groceries, their livelihoods. But they're looking for that one escape, that one escape, to get away from the traffic jams and the 9 to 5 bosses that they got to deal with every day and so on. And something that they might want to share with their own families, their spouses and their children, that they want to have to help grow with. You know what I'm saying? And solidify the family unit. We've got to respect these aspects of their lives when we ask them to buy our products and engage in the fandom and hobby, and make a hobby out of it. We can't just go ripping apart another person's creation because we think we're better than the original creator themselves. We can't just create things out of thin air and tell our customers to take it or leave it. Tell our fans, our hobbyists, to take it or leave it. It doesn't work like that. It's bad business. It's bad form. It's unprofessional, and it should, and most importantly, it'll make us, the creators, any one of us creators that does that, look like hacks and such. So we got to be careful with that. You know what I'm saying? We got to be careful with that. And yeah. End of Matt Ward. No more Matt Ward, guys. Let me finish up the Necrons and Orcs. I want to do the Necrons versus Orcs. I know there's a I know I can't remember the name of the war, but apparently the Necrons and Orcs have a war, and I want to do the war so I can close out the Necrons and move on to the next race. So, thank you all. I'm sure you all got a lot of thoughts about Matt Ward in the comments. Keep it clean. No threats. No disparaging remarks. You know what I'm saying? Just keep your criticisms constructive. You know what I'm saying? That's all I ask. You know what I'm saying? Just, put the effort in on doing that. You know what I mean? When you vent in the comments. So head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links down in the description below, along with links to other merches, pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you have a copy of The Impossible Man and did a lore video on it, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. And if you're interested, you could join my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I do lore research, Japanese cultural studies, gaming, and more. I look forward to hanging out with you. So until the next round of Warhammer research, thank you all for joining me. I wish you all a good night, a buenas noches, and oyasumi nasai.